That's right, I keep forgetting to unmute myself on the Telegram live stream. Let me just see if the YouTube one is working. Let's see.
Try to keep forgetting.
Yeah, the YouTube live stream seems to be up. So yeah, as people come in, as we allow people to fill up, yeah, this is going to be another impromptu stream. And there he is there. I'll unmute Roman. Roman, if you want to speak, just see if you can.
Okay, it seems I've turned a microphone on.
Okay,
Can you hear me?
I can hear you. Let me just check in Telegram, just see if other people can hear you in there. If you can hear both of us, could you chat in Telegram if you could post in there if you can hear both of us? Is there anyone in YouTube yet? You're live, I can hear you. That's on YouTube. If you could just, Raman, if you wouldn't mind just saying a few words.
So give me a link to YouTube. I don't have a link. How to find
your I'll post. You should just be able to stay in here. I'm just checking to see if your audio is going to go through to the YouTube stream, the restream on YouTube as well. So the volume of guest is very low. That's on YouTube. We can hear both on YouTube. Okay, so I think we're pretty much good to go. I'll quickly post the YouTube link into the Telegram and we'll start to get stuff. Just as people filter in. So, right, what have we got? 48 there. Guest volume is low. Can Kurkens, if that's how you pronounce your name, if you could, can you still hear it okay? Is it because it's coming off?
I'm here. I'm listening to you loud and clearly, but so do you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. The problem is I'm not speaking to you specifically at the moment. That's the thing. I'm speaking to some of the people in the YouTube chat. So yeah, because this is being streamed via Telegram, I'm not too sure if you're going to pick up okay onto the YouTube restream. So let me just try and sort that out. I don't really have a link directly to the. So people listening on YouTube, I am posting the link to the Telegram group there in the chat in YouTube at the moment. So if the voice is not coming through okay, it might be better just to come and listen to it on the Telegram live stream. Like I say, unfortunately, Restream appears to have blocked itself in Belarus. So my guest here can't really, we can't use Restream. Otherwise, it should have all worked. So like I can understand it, but it's slightly distant sounding. Like I say, if it's really bad, the only thing I can say is it might be best just to come onto the Telegram live stream and listen to it via there. So, yeah. So just to give you guys a quick overview, I'm going to be speaking with Raman, if I'm pronouncing your name okay. Roman or Raman?
You pronounce it correctly.
Raman. Okay. I am going to be speaking to Raman, who is a Belarusian national who's currently in Minsk. We're going to be asking him a couple of questions about the situation in Minsk in Belarus, and maybe about his and what he perceives the wider view of the people of Belarus is to the events in Ukraine. And then after that, I am probably going to be delving into the developing situation in Mariupol regarding the theater and what has happened there today. And then after that, I might move on a bit to questions. If anyone is wishing to ask any questions, I'll answer those in a bit. So again, people listening on YouTube, if unfortunately Raman is quite quiet, I don't really know how to deal with it. The best thing.
I'm not speaking. I'm just listening what you are saying.
Yeah, that's not a problem. I'm just telling the people on YouTube if they can't really hear you, because I think the only way they're being able to hear you is the sound coming off of my monitor playing back to itself. So I'm just telling them if they want to hear the audio okay. I'll just quickly check the Telegram. If people in the Telegram chat, if they could just confirm to me that both of us can be heard okay. Loud and clear in Telegram, loud. Okay. Radio. So here both. Okay, so again, for people listening on YouTube, if the audio isn't the best, it might be better to just come and listen to it via Telegram, and I will post that every now and again in the YouTube chat for the YouTube guys to be aware of. Again, apologies for this. Restream's been blocked in Minsk, so I don't really know how to work around it. This is my first time trying to use Restream and put this stuff up, so I apologize for that. But other than that, I guess we'll just delve into it. So yes, hello Raman, and thank you for joining me tonight. I hope you're keeping well.
You've invited me.
Yep, not a problem. So if you don't mind, and as much as you're willing to say, I mean, would you be willing to tell us about yourself? Like, are you originally from Minsk, or have you moved to Minsk from elsewhere in Belarus, or something like that? Or
No, I was born in Minsk. My age is 30 years, so I'm working in the branch of international trade. So maybe this gives you some prospects or something.
okay,
Well, I'm some kind of interested in politics, so I'm monitoring the whole situation and trying to figure out what is really happening and something like that.
okay. So I guess first of all, I would ask, what is the situation in Minsk at the moment? And again, with the caveat, if there's anything you feel you don't want to talk about, if it might get you into any kind of trouble legally or otherwise, feel free not to answer. But what is the sort of general situation in Minsk, and how are the people there feeling or looking like?
Okay, there is no some kind of martial law in Belarus. There is regular life happening. So you can ask me anything, and don't worry about. There is no danger for me to say anything.
Okay.
In Minsk, there is nothing happening. Regular life is always nothing happens. Maybe the only interesting thing I can tell you, I've heard a couple of times a helicopter flying over the city, and that's all.
Okay, so for all intents and purposes, Minsk is just carrying on as if the war has never started or happened to a degree.
That's true. But you have, I have to say, only in the southern part of Belarus, there are some Russian troops moving around Gomel city, which is situated in southern part of Belarus. So only there are some military actions, but not military action, but some Russian troops are moving and so on. But in the rest of Belarus, there are nothing happening.
Okay, so even in the months leading up to the invasion or the operations in Ukraine, you didn't personally see like Russian troops moving through Minsk, no convoys or stuff like that, no?
No, there were no convoys, no troops, and so on. I think that because there is no reason to move troops through Minsk because it is located far from the Ukrainian border, and there is no sense to move troops through Minsk.
Okay, so what is, I don't know if you watch the local Belarusian news or the like, but what is the government or the news in Belarus? What is it saying to the people of Belarus in Minsk about what's happening? What is the...
Oh. Okay, I'm sorry, but I can't say you because I don't watch TV and I only read news on the internet.
Okay.
But I don't watch some official Belarusian media because I don't trust them, I don't like them, and I don't really know, and I don't really care what they are saying.
Okay. Well, very healthy attitude to take. I have the same view about media in the West, so we can bond over that. A mutual distrust of the mainstream media wherever it is.
Yeah, I agree with that, absolutely.
Well, I don't know if you've really been speaking to people much, but have you been speaking to people on the street, maybe family members or friends about what's happening in Ukraine? Or
Yeah, yeah, sure. I speak to my relatives, to my friends, to my colleagues, and so on. Well, I guess you are interested. What do people think about the whole situation?
yeah,
Well, it's very difficult. Well, the situation is very complicated. There are some nuances, and also it's always there are many people with their different opinions. But well, let's say. Major branches, like maybe it would better say to like branches of opinions. Okay, it's like maybe call it communist opinion, like those people like to think that there is fascism or Nazism is in Ukraine, so they support Russian action and Russian invasion of Ukraine. There are several people in Belarus. There are many people who think so. There are maybe
so
another like
those are people who are in supportive of the Russian action.
yeah.
Okay.
There are. So the second branch, I would say, I would call it liberal because they are in support of Ukraine because they are thinking thinking like Putin is doing some aggression against Ukraine and trying to destroy Ukrainian democracy. So, and there are a third major branch of opinion, and people who don't care about politics, and they just how to say it, unsatisfied with the fact that there is war. They are like. Hope I speak English good enough to explain my thoughts.
Yeah, apathetic with
specific ideologies, but they don't. They like peaceful living and want to peace reinstalled again. How to say it? Something like that, maybe.
They just want the war to end and life to return to normal. That be.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
I can say really what proportions are there, how many people support some of these branches, but in my job, my colleagues are mostly like liberal, I guess, but my relatives are mostly like don't care about politics and want to peace
to return. Okay.
Yeah.
So I would then ask, what would you feel Belarusians generally, what would be the general feeling of Belarusians before the war towards, say, Russians and Ukrainians? What would have been the view there?
Well, it's very difficult to say exactly. Well, but most people, I think, they care about peace only, not about some political ideology. They view like Ukrainians and Russians as brotherly nations to Belarusians. So they don't want this war to happen, and they only want to peaceful life and to war to never happen, I guess.
Okay. So, well, what I was trying to get at is, would Belarusians feel closer to Russia than they would to Ukraine, maybe? Or is that just not a question? Or do they just feel the same towards both nations? Or
I guess they feel the same towards both nations.
Okay. So would many Belarusians have, say, for example, relatives in Russia and relatives in Ukraine and that sort of situation? Or
yeah, this also. I also have relatives in Russia, but I don't talk to them too much, and I don't even contact them.
Okay.
My mother contacted them. Well.
Wow, families drift apart. It's an unfortunate state of life, but nonetheless. So before the war, was it? I don't know if you would know this, but before the war, would it have been easy or relatively simple for Belarusians to travel to Ukraine, for example, or?
It was pretty easy. So if you don't have to apply to visa to travel to Ukraine, so I have also traveled to Ukraine several times. So it's very simple because in Ukraine many people speak Russian. But Ukrainian is also easy to understand for Russian or Belarusian speakers. So it's country very similar in mentality and in similar in culture. So it's very easy, and many people like to travel to Ukraine for to enjoy this country and to relax there.
Okay.
So,
Okay. And then if I'm not going to pry into your job, but you said it was to do with international trade. Have you and have the people of Minsk, have they started to experience the effect of what the Western sanctions are like on Belarus?
So yeah, we are personally my company. I'm working in experience some sanctions because some of our suppliers just refuse to supply us goods. So the situation is very difficult there because we can even say what. Let me think a couple of seconds.
Yeah, no problem.
Not even sanctions was applied, but they was very feared of sanctions, and they just stopped any connection with us because they are simply feared of sanctions. So, and we have several our suppliers just stopped to supply to us goods.
Okay. What about on the street? Have you noticed has there been a shortage of goods in shops, or has prices started to rise, or inflation, or anything of that effect?
I haven't noticed any shortages. The shelves on the shop are full of different stuff. And,
Okay.
like Belarusian goods, Russian and Ukrainian, and also some Western like Polish, German, and something. And there is no major changes in prices. Maybe some goods are have raised in prices, but only a small portion of them actually.
Okay, so for all intents and purposes, Belarus so far seems to be doing okay through the sanctions. It's not really being felt by the man and woman on the street.
Yeah, something like that.
Okay, okay. And then I'm not too sure how to word this because again, I don't want to potentially get you into trouble at all. But the President Lukashenko, he has put out some messages saying that he appears to have believed that Ukraine was preparing at one point to attack Belarus. I don't know, as he said, do you know if he has said that on domestic media in Belarus or?
Well, I personally hate him. I can't even listen to him because I feel like I'm puking.
Okay.
Honestly speaking, I don't even listen to him. I don't even care what
Okay.
he's saying. And, I don't even know. I've heard it first time from you.
Okay.
I hate him, so I don't even care what he's saying.
Okay, fair enough. Like I said, it's probably wise for people everywhere not to pay attention to what the press says. I don't even own a TV myself, so it's a good way to live one's life and to be free of the stuff that comes from it. But other than that, I guess do you know if there's been any increase in the police in Minsk? Have the police been more noticeable, or is the local KGB? Do you know if there's been more arrests of people who oppose Lukashenko at all, or anything along that line? Or
No, police and KGB, I guess, works as usual. There is no arrests here. Well, at least I've heard of. So, like, regular life is happening. And
okay, so for all intents and purposes, life in Minsk, although there is small disruptions in your personal life because of where you work, but by in general, Minsk life is just going on as normal.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, well, I guess that's glad to hear. I'm glad to hear the people of Belarus aren't suffering too much through this affair. So this is probably where it'd be good for me to have another co-host to kind of spitball questions, but those were kind of the big questions I wanted to ask. Is there anything that you would like to say, or any questions you'd like to ask me, or?
I don't know. Or why are you interested in that topic particularly?
Oh, in Minsk, or just in general, the sort of wider?
In war, and why are you interested?
Oh,
that much?
well, personally, I was going through university whenever the Euromaidan happened. So whenever that started, I watched it day in and day out, the live streams and the live footage that came out of Kiev on the Maidan as it happened. I then took that on to do a dissertation based off of that around Russian geostrategy, Russian foreign policy, especially in regard to NATO expansion, with an emphasis on countries such as Ukraine and Georgia. So that's kind of where my background came from. So this war in Ukraine, it's kind of, I know this is coming from a very detached point of view, but it's kind of like a continuation of that, as in I watched the events of the Euromaidan 8 years ago, and now 8 years later, I'm watching day in and day out the Russian invasion of Ukraine. If that makes sense, it's just kind of like an interest that I've had over a while, and it's kind of exploded, and if you excuse probably the inappropriate pun, in such a magnificent fashion. It's just kind of got me fascinated to follow it. Plus, I had Ukrainian friends, and I have Russian friends as well, and I've always just had an interest in the countries of Eastern Europe, and especially Russia, the former Soviet republics, essentially.
Okay, that's quite interesting that Euromaidan is also happened the same year I graduated from the university, and like we have something in common, I guess.
Yeah.
Well, I'm also very interested in politics in Ukraine the whole 8 years, simply because it's a neighboring country. Like I guess you wouldn't be that interested in politics like in Thailand, I guess, because it is very far away.
Yeah.
But Ukraine is a neighboring country, so I was very interested, and I was I have been looking to Ukrainian policy all these years, throughout 8 years.
Okay. So if this isn't too hot a topic, what would you have a political ideal you might subscribe to? Would you consider yourself a liberal in the Belarusian sense of the word, or a conservative, or a socialist, or something along those lines? I mean, if it's too
well, I guess the best description of my political views is right-wing nationalist, I guess.
Okay, based.
Maybe there are many nuances in nationalism, but I'm the kind of Belarusian nationalist. So my viewpoint is based on that.
Okay, based, if I might say so myself, based and red-pilled.
Maybe in Belarus there are a few people who even know what is red-pilled, but maybe you can call me red-pilled or something.
Well, how would I say that in Russian? How would one say based and red-pilled in Russian?
There is no Russian equivalent for that term.
Oh, is there not?
Because like red pilled is a very American topic, which is connected to, I guess, Republican Party, and not many people that much interested in American politics, and there is no Russian translation for this term.
Oh, well, I was hoping, sorry, chat, I was hoping I could have given you a bit of language advice, but unfortunately the term doesn't exist in Russian, it appears. But so, if you don't mind me just expanding this a bit more. So from my, oh yeah, not a problem. From my understanding is that Belarus and Russia, they're part of a union called the Union State. And the idea behind that is Belarus and Russia at some point in the future might form a kind of federation between the two countries and form a new nation. Do you know anything about that? Would you have any comments to say about that? Do you think it would be good for Belarus and Russia and potentially Ukraine to unite, or?
Okay, this is a very complicated question because the first of all, the whole idea behind this union state of Belarus and Russia was to Lukashenko to gain more power. He even when this union was formed, Lukashenko wanted to form this union and become the president of this union, and particularly that means that Lukashenko wanted to be the president of Russia. That was his plan, and the whole reason he started the whole this idea about building Belarus and Russia union nation or union country or union state, I guess, is because he wanted to be. He wanted to replace Yeltsin and to become the owner of Kremlin. That's the idea he wanted, but he failed in that, and now he fears that Russia absorbs Belarus and drive him out of power.
So Lukashenko tried to annex Russia, but now he fears that Russia might annex Belarus instead.
Yes, and now he fears that Russia might annex Belarus. Yeah.
Okay. Well, do you just say on a personal level, do you think it would be not Russia annexing Belarus, but do you think that it might be a good idea if Russia, Belarus, and potentially hypothetical at some point, Ukraine, if they were to form a country between the three of them, not dominated by one or the other, but, or do you think it's too far gone and these countries just should stay independent of each other?
So as I have already said, I'm a Belarusian nationalist, so I'm sure I'm against this union, and I want Belarus to be independent, especially independent from Russia, and Belarus to be a separate nation.
Okay.
And so I don't like. I'm a kind of Russophobic. Maybe kind of, and so I don't want to live with the Russian in the same state. I want to Belarusian and Russian to be separated with border.
Okay, so would you want Belarus to be closer to the West, towards America, towards NATO, towards Europe, or on it just completely as its own independent sovereign state?
Well, maybe 10 years ago, I wanted to Belarus to be part of NATO and to be part of European Union. But now I pretty much hate what United States are and what European Union is, and I don't want to join them. I want Belarus to be a separated nation. Never join any military alliance or political alliance, or just separate nation with no alliances.
Okay, so its own neutral, independent power. Okay. And would you think that would be a common view amongst the Belarusian people, or is it just sort of...
No, this is absolutely uncommon. I may say, like, some right-wing... most of Belarusians are rather communist or liberals or something, but maybe there are 5% of Belarusians who are really right-winged or something like that. I'm pretty sure I am a minority in my political views.
Okay. Okay, fair enough. So I guess most other questions I would have tangentially about this, I guess sort of a final question just to sort of wrap it up. I mean, what would be your view and sort of the Belarusian people's view of the Soviet Union, of maybe not exactly communism itself, but that sort of wider union of all these countries and the legacy that is passed on to Belarus and Russia and Ukraine?
It's very difficult. Yet again, it is very complicated question because that depends on a person. So many people like who were living good in the Soviet Union, the minority of the population who are living good, they are nostalgic about Soviet Union. But many people were living in poverty, and that's why they are very happy that the Soviet Union have collapsed. Like my mother, especially.
Okay, fair enough. Well, just on that point, that's pretty much all the questions I feel that's immediately sprung to mind that I feel I could ask you. So unless you have anything that you would like to ask back, or if you have any social media that you would like people to subscribe to, or otherwise, I think that's pretty much as I've got.
Well, I don't have any social media because I think it's pretty harms people really. But I'm your subscribers. I write some comments, and I also will write some comments. So yes, some people may maybe talk to me in the comment section of your channel. Also, maybe there are some other people who have questions. Maybe they want to ask something, and you can ask me another question.
Yeah, no problem. Well, I was just going to move on to some of the other topics. So at this point, if you don't mind, I'm basically going to mute you just so I can move on with the rest of the discussion. If you want to hang about, if there is questions, I can obviously if people are specifically asking you questions, I can bring you back in. But just on that point, for anyone in the Telegram chat, Roman is going by a profile called Q. Do you want me to show your profile on screen so people will know it, or?
Sure, yeah, you may show my profile.
Okay.
If you have some question, you feel free to ask me.
Yeah, no problem. So let's see, how do I do this? So it's pretty nondescript. Just here you go, people in Telegram. If you're watching on YouTube, that's the profile that Roman is using. It's just basically a capital Q on a purple background. So if you happen to come across him in any of the comments that's going on in the channel, Roman's happy to take any questions that you might have for him. So, yep, with that point, thank you very much, Roman. Like I say, if you're willing to hang about, if I come across questions as I go through them later on, I'll bring you back on to answer them as I come across them.
Okay, I'm very pleased you've invited me to this stream. So if you have any question, feel free to ask. If you want to have another stream with more questions, you can also ask me to join, and I will ask these questions. So maybe some of your guests will have some questions, and you can tell me that question. I will answer them.
Yep, not a problem. I'll be sure to do that. So, yep, thank you very much. And just at that point, I apologize. I'm going to have to mute you just for the moment, just as I move on to the other stuff I was looking to talk about. So, yep. So that's the section with our quick Q&A with a Belarusian national in Minsk about the situation there. At this point, I'm going to move on to talk about what is probably going to be the biggest story out of Ukraine today. And for people who aren't aware, there is a theater in Mariupol that appears to have been bombed. And there's a lot of controversy and discussion about what has exactly happened. But essentially, the story that's going around, especially in the Western press at the moment, is that there was a theater in Mariupol that was being used as a bomb shelter by potentially up to 1,200 civilians. And it appears, the emphasis on appears, it appears that it was hit by Russian artillery, or it was suffered an airstrike today. And if that's true, then looking at the damage, which I'll bring to show up, so I will just bring this up on screen for people who are on YouTube to look at it. This is one of the scenes of, I believe this is from the side road of the theater. There's more footage of the damage. Hopefully there's nothing too extreme that's going to pop up. I don't think I've shared any bodies at the moment. So this is footage not of today, but of the conditions said to be within the theater in the past couple days. So as you can see, lots of people have crowded into the theater to take shelter and refuge in it. This could be to avoid direct fighting and where their homes are. Their homes could have been destroyed in shelling. Either way, as you can see for this footage, is there's sizable numbers of civilians that have crowded into the building, at least in this footage. So if it has been hit by an strike and these people were in here, we could be looking at quite significant casualties. Now, where there's a lot of controversy about this is, see, is this the specific post? Is there's been a bit of back and forth on both sides in regard to it. So this is some footage of the destruction is seen from the outside. So this is the car park in front of the theater. So potentially this, if it does appear as to what it appears to show, this could be the single biggest loss of life in the war so far. Where there's controversy about the theater specifically, I hope I'm not doxing any of my Telegram contacts here, but is that the Russian telegrams channels have claimed for a number of days that essentially the Azov battalion, so if I'll bring this up here, as you can see, one of the biggest English language pro-Russian telegram accounts, Intel Slava, says that a Azov battalion fighter fled from the Ukrainian nationalists, went over to the Russian side, and in the information that he divulged to the DNR, the Donetsk People's Republic fighters in the Russian military, is that spoke about the atrocities of Ukrainian Nazis in Mariupol. He also spoke about the headquarters of the militants in the Mariupol theater, in the lobby of which there are civilians held hostage by Azov. This, if I check the timing of this was posted today at around about 2 o'clock UK time. So Ukraine is 2 hours ahead of GMT. So in fact, yeah, that was literally just on 2 o'clock. So that would have been about 4 o'clock Ukrainian time. That was, wait, am I looking at that right? Yeah, 4 o'clock Ukrainian time. So here I'm just outlining, this was a post a couple of days ago from this specific Telegram account. This specific Telegram account is used, it is either run directly by or it is used by Russian military intelligence. This account has a long history, which I've posted for a number of times, of marking direct, this could be an example of it here, marking direct locations and the number of Ukrainian military personnel and assets in particular parts of Ukraine. So if this was a post on the 6th of March, specifically speaking about the theater. So here you can see March 6th, posted at 11 o'clock in the morning British time on the 6th of March. Does that come up with the full date there? So there you can see it. So this was posted about 10 days ago. It talks about the theater, and this is the translation of the theater here. The authorities of Mariupol, nevertheless, it's talking about the evacuation humanitarian corridors. So here it mentions directly the drama theater in Mariupol, which if you check on Google Maps, you can verify the locations of it. So from at least 10 days ago, this account, which I'm very strongly positive is used or run by Russian military intelligence. So the point I'm trying to make is the Russians definitely knew that this theater was being used by civilians either as a shelter or as an evacuation route, or if the above claim from Intel Slava is accurate, that the Azov battalion was holding civilians hostage in as human shields or whatever within the theater. So if the Russians in fact did airstrike the theater, that to me is, in my mind, this is just my own personal take, that to me would, I don't know if it would class as a war crime, but it would be morally wrong, because that would be the Russians directly striking a known civilian target with civilians in the target, even if there was military application of the building itself, which would make it a bit more nuanced. But nonetheless, is that the Russians were clearly aware that there was civilians within this building. It was a civilian target by and large. So where are the next points? So here we go. This is just me outlining that the Russians were aware in some regard But then the other aspect to this is that there was a couple of tweets have emerged, and there's been some other posts on Telegram where discussing that the Azov battalion might have essentially, quote unquote, false flagged the theater, that they could have blown up the theater themselves to try and create atrocity propaganda. This war has been marked by both sides, but I have to admit to a degree a bit more that on the Ukrainian side, of hyping up various atrocities because of the reaction it's going to get on Western press and on the international press. So those are the two competing theories at the moment about what's happening. Either the Azov battalion blew up the theater, and I don't know if there might have been civilians there at the time, or the Russians bombed it. What makes me a bit more suspicious about this is, let's see, where is it? There was some footage. So where is the particular? So as you can see, this is very soon after the explosion, and just the sort of demeanor of this scene. This could be right after it. I don't know. I can't comment about it, but there's very few people around. There's very little first responders. There's not a lot of sound coming out of it. This gentleman, he could be in shock. Granted, he could very well be in shock, but there doesn't seem to be a lot of urgency amongst the people in the vicinity of this. So there's another video that I found. No, that's not it. Is it this? Where is it? I don't want to scroll too far up because I might come across something that might get me in trouble on YouTube. So yeah, here you go. This is a picture of the theater, the before and after. So if I'm not mistaken, this part of the building might be this part here. So this is coming from the park that would be off to the side here. So the other aspect of this is the way this is. I'm not an expert in explosives and how things explode, but I wouldn't say this was artillery. So I don't think this was artillery, because generally if an artillery shell hit it, it would probably most likely have detonated on the roof, and then the building would have collapsed inwards. As you can see with the way the debris is spread out just from this picture across the park, that to me says that something has exploded inside the building and thrown this debris out. That could have been an aircraft dropped munition that might have gone through the roof and then exploded as it went into the building. It could have been, again, hypothetically, this could be an Azov planted explosives within the theater that has exploded within the theater. But it is something to note the way, at least from this picture, the way the building seems to have been destroyed is it's exploded from the inside out, as opposed to, say, the way most conventional artillery, whenever it hits something, that's whenever the artillery shell explodes. So in this case, it would have come down on the roof, and the roof would have collapsed in, as opposed to, again, without repeating myself, all this debris being spread out around the building. But there was another video I'm particularly looking for. It's more right. I don't want to scroll too far up in case I come across something that's going to get me in trouble on YouTube. But they essentially what it is there was a video of purporting to be the aftermath of it, and you could see a man walking with a shopping bag, rather, I wouldn't say nonchalantly, but there wasn't a lot of urgency in the way he was walking past the building. I've not seen it yet. And I'm not saying it's not out there, but I've not seen any footage of casualties or anything of that nature. So don't hold this to me. I've just not seen it yet. I'm just giving you what I've seen so far. I have not seen casualties, and an event of this nature, generally, you would have people there filming it. You'd have first responders around the building. I just haven't seen that yet. I haven't seen the footage of it. In fact, I'm going to take a bit of a risk and have a look through some of the Ukrainian channels and see if they've got anything on it. Where's the big Ukrainian channel? The problem is that the Ukrainian channels are quite fond of posting gruesome pictures of deceased Russian soldiers, so I'm a bit concerned of that. So yeah, the big Ukrainian channels I tend to follow aren't unless that could be part of it. I'm going to have to translate that and have a look. But generally, like I say, there's no footage coming out of immediate casualties, of first responders in the vicinity of the theater, which to me is a bit, I don't want to say suspicious, but generally that's the kind of thing you'd expect to see in a situation like this, is that kind of thing. And the airstrike, whatever hit the theater, would have been around about 3 or 4 hours now. So there's a number of hypotheticals that are going about in my head at the moment. I honestly couldn't say one other way. It could be that potentially civilians were moved out of the theater and then maybe Azov blew it up to try and get a propaganda kind of story out of it. Did the Azov battalion become aware that, the Russians were fully aware that they were using the building, so they evacuated it and moved the civilians out, and then the Russians hit the building? That could be something. Either way, like I say, just I haven't seen footage yet, and usually, as we've seen whenever the maternity hospital was bombed, within minutes of that is footage of it was going up here, there, and everywhere. So with that caveat, I honestly don't know what to make of the situation in the theater at the moment until I can see some discernible footage, images, whatever, of what exactly has happened there. I can't take a hard stance one way or the other. So, but if we just have a quick look, let us have a look and see what is going on the BBC. So this is the BBC. Is this specifically referring kidnapped Mariupol? Because Russia cynically hit Mariupol theater, officials say. So this is what the BBC is saying. Officials say numbers of casualties is still not clear. The Russian attack on the theater in Mariupol. Mariupol officials say a Russian plane dropped a bomb on the city's theater where up to 1,200 civilians were sheltering. They say Russia deliberately and cynically hit the site, a large Soviet-era building in the city center. Ukraine's foreign minister has called it another horrendous war crime, saying it was impossible that Russia didn't know that the place was a civilian shelter, which is true, because as I've pointed out in the last few minutes, is that the Russians were clearly aware that this was used to some capacity by civilians. But the rest of the point goes on. Russia, the attack is one of a number on civilian buildings that were said to have been targeted by Russia in cities across Ukraine. The Russian ministry has denied attacking the theater. So let's just have a quick look. Pictured aftermath of so as you can see, this is going to be a very big story in the Western press. If this is I don't know if this is Biden specifically referring to Putin as a war criminal because of the events at the theater itself. But from what I've seen so far, like I said, this is my own personal take. From what I've seen so far, I don't know what to make of it. I don't want to come down and say, basically it was a false flag and potentially no one's died, and then footage comes out of a horrific tragedy that's happened at the theater, and atrocity. But just from what I've seen so far, there is something strange going on about the theater. I've given my reasons. Whenever similar stuff like this has happened elsewhere in Ukraine, is the press footage comes out across the Ukrainian Telegram accounts, it floods social media, and that just doesn't appear to be happening. As you can see, I showed you some of the biggest Ukrainian Telegram accounts that I personally follow for stuff, and they have no footage from it. So I'm just finding that a bit suspicious. The video itself from the car park and the like, I mean, I've never been in a situation like this, so take it with a grain of salt of what I would hypothesize a tragedy like this would look like. But I would expect, there would be casualties crawling on the ground, people clambering into the rubble to dig people out, and that just doesn't seem to be there. If anything, the footage of people near the area, they seem very, I don't want to say nonplussed by it, but they just don't seem to have the urgency. So there is something strange going on about this theater story. Both sides are very on Telegram. Both sides are ramping up the rhetoric. The Russians are either outright denying it, or they're saying it was these are Russian Telegram accounts. Some of them state actors, some of them not, just random Russians running Telegram accounts. Some of them are saying, yeah, we were right to hit it because it was an Azov headquarters. Others just completely denied it. But as you can see, whatever the story is, the Western press via the BBC has just run with it. So I guess we will have to wait and see what comes out about what has actually happened there. So that is just one of the big issues of the day, that if you are in Western countries and you look at the news, that is going to probably be the big story, like the maternity hospital was. So I just wanted to raise that and have a look at it. And just to be fair to them, I did share one of the Russian, where is it? I did share one of the Russian Telegram accounts disputing the event. So just in interest of fairness. So here you go. So this is from, it's below it, isn't it? So this channel here, this is one of the big Russian channels I personally follow. They posted this. I worked out the timelines, but this, what was the time this was posted at? That was the time I shared it. The time it was posted was about 5 o'clock. So this would have been within the hour, if I'm remembering the specific times of whenever the airstrike or whatever happened at the theater happened. So I think that's might be the BBC article immediately on it. I can't read Cyrillic, so I'm not too sure specifically what that says, so I can't comment on that. But so here's the Russian, and then this is the translation that I came through. So this is what this Russian Telegram account is saying. So they're saying what the fake news is. Russian army hit a Mariupol drama theater with a super powerful bomb. There were 1,000 civilians inside. The version of the Ukrainian Telegram channels was picked up by US media. The truth is what this Russian Telegram account is saying. According to Redovka, again, forgive my pronunciation, no shelling was carried out in the district of the city where the drama theater was located. Heavy street fighting is taking place in the vicinity. It is not impossible to deliver such strikes without risk of hitting friendly forces. So the Russians are saying that the Russians wouldn't have used artillery because there are potential Russian soldiers fighting nearby and the risk of friendly fire is too great. Of course, it could have been an airstrike. They haven't commented on that. And then they go up further on. They say, earlier Telegram channels reported that nationalists from the Azov battalion were preparing a provocation in the theater building. Pardon me. Information, they link to it. It's almost certainly going to be in Cyrillic. So, okay, helpfully they've provided an English translation. Breaking news. So this was before the bombing. This was earlier today, as you can see by the time this was posting. So this is a few hours before the bombing. Breaking news, a militant from Azov, and it's basically the same thing I pointed out earlier. Apparently an Azov fighter was captured by the Russians. Upon interrogation, he said that the Azov battalion appeared to be using the theater as an HQ of sorts, and they had civilian, apologies, I'm going senile for a second, that they are using human shields in the form of civilians who are seeking shelter within the drama theater. So that was put out in a couple hours before it. Going back to this post, and it just outlines again what was said. Apparently, this is the second monstrous provocation in Mariupol. The first was the maternity hospital. So in the interest of fairness, that is what this, one of the larger Russian Telegram accounts is saying about the event. So there is something very strange going on about, oh, I didn't have that on screen. Apologies. Like I say, I'm going senile. So this is the post I've just been talking about. This is the translation of this post from this account, which is one of the larger, as you can see, almost 1 million, 750,000 subscribers. This is one of the larger Russian Telegram accounts that are following the conflict in Ukraine. And then this is the post. No, that's the CNN article. Was it this? This is the post which it took its information off, which had the English translation. So, yeah, I honestly don't know what to say other than that. From what I've said, I can't give a hard stance one way or the other, but there clearly is something very strange going on about this theater, just from what I've seen. with the caveat that if footage comes out of essentially an atrocity has been committed at the theater, I just haven't seen it yet. So I just want to flag that up for you guys to have a look at and just be aware of, because as you can see in the BBC, and I'd imagine if the BBC is running it, pretty much all Western press are running with the story. It is going to be one of the bigger stories of, if not the biggest story to come out of Ukraine today. So other than that, just for a quick rundown from what I've seen across the field, essentially the front still largely remains static. The only real military engagements that I've seen, apart from sporadic shelling around Kiev and in the Nikolaev area, is that the Russians and DNR are steadily advancing into Mariupol. They are putting, this could influence what has happened at the theater, but either way, the noose, for lack of a better term, is tightening around the Ukrainian army and the Azov battalion within Mariupol. The DNR especially is going into the city after them. So one hypothetical scenario could be that the Azov battalion within the city is starting to have radical ideas and get desperate. That could be one aspect of it. And for people who want to follow the specific Telegram channels that I'm following, again, I don't read Cyrillic, but if you go into the Telegram channel, whenever I forward something, so here I forwarded this, if you just click that, that'll take you to the page itself, so you can then follow it freely at your accord. That's what I do with every, again, I'm not a journalist. This is not my footage. All I'm doing for what I'm doing on Telegram is I'm just taking other people's footage, putting it up there for you to watch footage from both sides, giving a bit of context where I can on specific videos and in combats, and trying to assess a wider military state of military affairs across Ukraine, and how who's doing what, where, and when, with video evidence in the images that I personally come across. So yeah, again, if you want to follow the channels that I follow, you're free to do. That's just how you do it. Whenever I forward something, just click on the channel name and it'll take you straight to him to follow it. And yeah, so with that, I guess I will start to move on to people asking for questions and stuff. Just for people who have asked, I have started to grift. I have set up a coffee account. If I'm not going to be shilling it and stuff like that, well, I am going to shill it now. But if for people who were asking, if you do feel like giving me something, I'll post it in the Telegram chat now. Don't feel obligated. It's just if for people who are asking, I have set up a coffee account. I do have a PayPal if people would prefer just to avoid the, I think it's like 3% charge fee that coffee gives, but that is there and it's just been posted in the coffee account if people feel minded to. But with that, I will jump into the questions, I guess. So that's if the Telegram guys don't mind, I am just going to run through the YouTube comments because it looks like there's a lot less of them there, and fly through those. So Roman sounds like speaking in another room. Yeah, again, I think it worked perfectly on Telegram because we were both using speaking through Telegram. The problem with YouTube is that I think YouTube is having to pick up the audio of him speaking on Telegram through the microphone to then play back. The original idea I wanted to have was for both me and Roman to speak via Restream, but whenever he tried to join Restream, we discovered that Restream, in all its wisdom, has decided that it's not going to allow people in Belarus to have a voice. So as you can see, Western sanctions in action, I'm afraid. So until, like I say, I am new at this stuff. This is only my third independent stream I've ever done. This is my first attempt to try and use Restream. I'm learning on the job. So as I get more acquainted, as I work out various workarounds, I'm hoping the quality of this stuff will improve over time. So just more comments on Michael, stop rambling and get on with what's going on. Okay, I apologize. There was talk earlier today about Ukrainian counterattack. Did it materialize? Not that I've seen. I'm going to need details of it. Who's messaging me on Telegram? No, I can't speak to you at the moment. I apologize. without details of where this counterattack was meant to have happened or the details of it, I haven't seen it that I'm aware of. There doesn't seem to have been any significant military engagements or pushes on either side across Ukraine that I've been aware of today, apart from Mariupol. Theater seems like a false flag to me. If Russians had that prisoner tell them the theater had military hardware, yet also knew there were civilians there, they must have had some powerful reason to bomb the theater given their strict no harming civilians policy. No, I'm going to have to push back on that. It's the policy the Russians seem to be running with is whenever Russian soldiers themselves come face to face with civilians, is there to be accommodating with them. And I have seen some footage where that hasn't happened, but the vast majority of footage where Russian soldiers individually come across a Ukrainian civilian is they tend to be rather accommodating of them, with some very clear examples. Artillery and airstrikes are a different story altogether, because it's not a no harming civilian policy across the board, because if it was, then you can't really explain what's happening in Sumy, in Kiev, in Chernigov, in Kharkov, in Mariupol with the artillery. It's different with artillery because they're, by definition, an artilleryman firing at his allocated target miles away. There's a big dislocation between him and any potential victims that he might come across. There's that emotional distance on the ground, and artillery is an indirect weapon. You know, it's different if a Russian soldier sees the civilian and then shoots him. Yes, the ultimate outcome is the same, but on an ethical and a moral level, it's kind of a different thing, because that Russian soldier sees the civilian, and if he shoots them, you know, that's worse than someone who's told, yep, this is the artillery target for today. It's in this grid location, fire for effect. They let loose their shells, and then it hits and kills civilians, which a lot of it is doing. But I think that's by a specific policy. The Russians are using their artillery to try and, I don't want to say sporadically, but the way the Russians are using the artillery, you can see it. It's a legacy of stuff they've learned in Syria. Keep up a steady level of artillery and airstrikes upon a city that you've encircled, cauldron, a castle, whatever way you want to call it. Pepper that with artillery. Eventually, it's going to start encouraging the civilian population and potentially the Ukrainian military within the city to just leave the city for fear of just the random chances of death by artillery or airstrikes. Another example of that earlier today is that there was 10 civilians reported to have been killed in Chernigov as they lined up for food and bread, when a Russian artillery shell unfortunately hit them. So it's not the case that the Russians are not killing civilians at all. They are killing civilians, but it's very distinct policy between the Russian soldiers on the ground and the artillerymen and the artillerists. Our prices, sorry, people keep, hold on a second, apologies. People keep messaging me on Telegram. I apologize. This really isn't very professional of me, but I need to tell this person I am busy. I'm going to have to find a way to just blanket mute. Okay, so apologies for that, chat. Not very professional of me. Are prices going berserk? I think we covered that with Roman whenever we spoke to him. Is he worried that Western military aid will leak onto the... whenever we bring Roman on to ask him any questions or line of fact, let me bring up a Word document and I will save up these questions to ask Roman whenever we speak to him. No, we don't want that. WordPress. Why do I have to register? Do I not have Microsoft Word? Notepad? So, yeah, I'll just use this. I'll just copy and paste people's questions straight in here. Then I'll ask Roman whenever we come to him. So, is he worried about Western military aid? I know in the early days in Donbass, the old timers pulled old Soviet equipment out of their barns that their granddads lost in World War II. Does that happen in Belarus? I won't. Yeah, that's actually a good question because for people who aren't aware, and actually it's resurfacing again now, but in the Donbass war in 2014 is some very interesting stuff started to be pulled out by the Donetsk and Lugansk. I pronounce it Luhansk. Forgive me. Fighters, including they brought an old T-34 back into use, an old IS-2 tank that was in a local museum. They brought the engine back into working order. They put those into the field. You had footage of PTRS and PTRD. These are old World War II vintage era anti-tank rifles. They were employing those. There was footage of PPSHs. And just a few days ago, there was footage of Ukrainian territorial militia armed with DP-27s, with some PPSH-43 models. And on the flip side, I believe it was War Gonzo. He put out a video where he was looking at Donetsk fighters, well, snipers for the Donetsk militia, and they were armed with World War II vintage Mosin Nagants sniper rifles and scopes. So not only that is the Azov battalion were putting out pictures of them. It was probably a G3 or the Yugoslav variant, the M57, but the Azov put out videos of their troops brandishing a what they said was an MG42, which is obviously the famous German machine gun from the Second World War. So many old war horses emerged during the 2014 war and almost certainly in this war. So I'll definitely ask Raman whenever we bring him back that question. Just tell him red pill has to do with the Soviet Union. Ask him if he, okay, well, there's a lot of questions here. So I'll definitely bring in Raman. If you're still there, I will bring you back in to answer these just whenever I finish the one specifically for me. So I read that it was being used by Ukrainians as a headquarters in the, yep. What does Russo-Viet say? Is that a news outlet? I can't comment too much on that. I'm not familiar with that. That could be a shock. Never read too much into people's reactions in these situations. Mariupol is besieged, must hamper comms. Yes, it would, but I mean, there's internet to a degree in Mariupol because the Azov battalion keeps putting out videos of them in combat from Mariupol. And again, that's actually a good point. That's something I should probably have brought up, is maybe the internet and communications with Mariupol are just sketchy at the moment, but there is some kind of connection with Mariupol because, as I say, the Azov battalion especially is putting out a lot of footage of them fighting in the city. A lie runs around the world before the truth gets its boots on. Yeah, that's true. Could very well be true here. Just don't know. The Russian MOD deny hitting it. Is it possible the building was evacuated? That's potentially what I'm thinking of, because like I say, just from the scant footage that I have seen of it, I haven't seen any casualties. I haven't seen any blood. I haven't seen anything of that. So maybe the Azov battalion, seeing that their location was compromised on Telegram, and just decided, okay, get out of the building, everyone out of the building, and then the Russians struck it after, or Azov blew it up. Who knows? BBC prides itself on fake news. My guess is its desperate attempt by Azov to get the West directly involved. Remember chemical weapon attacks in Syria when the SAA was, the Syrian Arab Army was taking Aleppo. What is the name of the Russian channel? Again, I've shown you how to follow these channels on Telegram. The sound on Telegram was much better on YouTube. Yeah, I would expect that. Red pill is not a... Yeah, to be fair, yeah, I should probably have corrected that. But red pill is not an American conservative thing. It does come from the Matrix. It was populated, well, yeah, it was appropriated from the Matrix into politics, but it's not specifically an American. I'm unsubbing from your OnlyFans for this. Well, I'll double sub your OnlyFans. I mean, you know better about me because I don't know of this OnlyFans that I have. That's all the questions on YouTube. So that's BBC released a photo, children written on lawn, a satellite photo. No faith, no pain. I'm afraid I haven't seen that yet. If you put that in the Telegram somewhere, I'll try and come across it, but I haven't come across that. or the context of that, of the theater. Again, if you could put the source to that in the Telegram, I'll try and come across it and have a look at it. So, right, where is the thread? So, I apologize for anyone on the YouTube. I've gone through the YouTube chat and answered the stuff there. I'm now going to move it into the Telegram and start to work through those. So that's right. Where am I? Let's go to the top. So what's the Russian Navy up to in Odessa? I think what the Russian Navy is up to in Odessa is just trying to keep as much Ukrainian military men and material in the city as possible. If they can keep the specter that the Russian Navy is going to land at any opportunity, that's going to force the Ukrainians to keep military forces in the city that could probably be more use elsewhere in Ukraine, especially in the Nikolaev area. Because as footage that I've posted over the past couple of days is that the Ukrainians have a sizable number of tanks. A lot of their naval personnel, a lot of their sailors seems to have been converted into essentially naval infantry. So naval personnel who have to fight as infantry, they seem to be making up a large part of the garrison in the city. So I expect that's what the Russians are there to do, just play coy with the city every now and again, especially today. For people who aren't aware, the Pentagon has said that the Russian Navy ships came in close enough to the shore to actually shell targets on the mainland in Ukraine, which to my knowledge would be the first time that's happened so far in the war. This would be the most significant example of the Russian Navy hitting targets on mainland Ukraine. So that's a bit of an escalation. And that, to me, in my mindset off the top of my head, would be that's them just trying to signal to the Ukrainians, if you pull your troops out of the city, we're going to land there, or we could land at any moment. You better keep people in equipment here to stop us. I don't expect the Russians will land until they take Mykolaiv and their land forces from Crimea start approaching from the north. That's my personal take on that. So Pape's, is it confirmed that Mariupol was a Russian airstrike? I just don't know at the moment. Russians winning so hard, they have to kill citizens, kind of like Syria. Well, we hear fine. Is Zelensky still in Ukraine? I personally think he probably is. That's just my own personal take. I am willing to believe that Zelensky is in Ukraine. So both good, yeah. So the audio on Telegram seem to have been good both ways. So both are fine. In Telegram, we can adjust the level of you individually, exclude of YouTube. When will Russia start bombing NATO supplies? Once they start knowing where it is, and as soon as they can locate it on Ukrainian territory. That would be my expectation of it. So are the Russian combat tactics outdated against powerful anti-tank weapons designed by NATO? Is armor like in the 80s totally out of its depth in operations in 2022 against NATO technology? I mean, the way the Russians have been conducting themselves, yeah. But I wouldn't say that's necessarily Russian tactics. I just think the Russians are not applying their tactics. I think there is still very much a room for armor on the battlefield. And to a degree that has been demonstrated in Ukraine. The weakness of armor has definitely been demonstrated, but to a degree, I also think the benefit of armor has been demonstrated, because where the Russians have used their tanks effectively and combined arms with air support and with infantry is they've rolled the Ukrainians. It's where the Russians are just sending tanks in without proper infantry support. Like there was, in fact, I'll just bring it up. I'll not show the more explicit parts of it, but just in regards to this bit on the tank issue, right, will this play here? No, that's the wrong thing. Yeah, so let me just check if that comes up on the YouTube stream. I apologize for people on Telegram. You're not going to see the footage of this, I'm afraid, but the footage is already in the Telegram. So as you can see, I'm pretty sure this is a T-64. So this will have been a Donetsk fighter. This would have been a Ukrainian tank captured by the Russians or the Donetsk forces and handed to Donetsk. But as you can see, this tank is operating on its own. There's no infantry support around it. Here it's been hit by there. Its track has come off. So the tank is now immobilized. I'm not going to show every bit of it because it does get quite grisly, but here you can see the crew is trying to bail out of the tank. So the crew, some of the crew is still alive at least, and then that's pretty much all the crew killed. The driver does get out. I'm not going to show the bit with the driver, but the driver does get quite heavily wounded, and you see him crawling away at the end. But just the first part of that video is a very good demonstration. Tank on its own. There's some fire there, so the infantry behind the tank, enemy infantry, but there's no infantry supporting, no friendly infantry supporting the tank. Tank takes a hit to the rear. Crew panics, takes another hit. The driver panics, tries to reverse the tank, but the tank's been damaged. Its track comes off, which you can see here. That's the track coming off the tank. So therefore, the tank it's dead in the water. It can't do anything. And why has that happened? That should never happen. One, it's an urban area. Tanks never fare well in urban area if they're not properly supported. And again, I'll just quickly play this again. You can see some tracer rounds there. If you've seen it there, tracer rounds come out towards the tank. So there's Azov and Ukrainian troops in this apartment building here. So what's this tank coming up this road and turning its rear? Like, obviously, you know, in the heat of combat, it's all good for, well and good for me, some internet autist spurg to tell people how to fight a war. But either way, the way this, you would imagine this would be done is there should be Russian or friendly infantry pushing up along either side of this road, clearing out these apartment blocks with the tanks slightly behind of it. So say if there's shooting coming out of these apartments, the tanks can then fire into the apartment as direct fire support for the infantry. Not this, like this is, I don't know what these guys were told, if this is them doing it on their own or if they were commanded to do this, but this is just this is a waste of life and equipment. Like, this is potentially 4 crew in that tank, could be free. I don't know off the top of my head what the crew allotment for T-64 is, but I think it'd be about 4. So the rest of the video, only 1 man is able to get away from there, and he's very badly injured as a result from it. And not only that, is there's a second tank that comes up behind him that gets destroyed as well. And I don't know why the Russians especially seem to be doing this to such an extent, because it's just wasting their lives of their tankers and of equipment. I just can't work it out. I don't know if it's a failure on the command or if granted, this is a Donetsk. These are Donetsk. Well, I believe these are Donetsk tanks and troops. I don't know what the structure of command in their military is like. So is it just various independent, autonomous fighting units acting of their own accord? And for whatever reason, these tanks, this little squadron of tanks decided to do this. But either way, it's ended up with most of them killed, 2 vehicles lost. And I wouldn't be surprised if that driver, if he died of his wounds, because I'll not show it, but the driver he got out of the tank okay. So he was walking, he was running. He wasn't that badly injured then, but then it looks like an RPG or an anti-tank round landed within about 10 feet of him, blew him over the side of this fence here. And then this drone footage, you could see him just trying to crawl away. And he looked quite badly wounded. So I wouldn't be surprised if he himself has been killed, if he died from his injuries or if he was taken captive. But either way, it's just a waste of life. Well, I mean, the whole war, I guess, is a waste of life, but it's just, if it's the Ukrainian side or the Russian side, the Donetsk side, either way, it's just frustrating to watch people die for relatively stupid things. So that's just there on that specific comment about tanks there. Again, apologize to people in the Telegram who might not have been able to follow the footage of it, but I mean, if you just scroll up through the channel, you'll find the footage I'm talking about yourself. So let's have a look. Where is the question thread again? Here we go. So now, where was I? Is there a particular reason you've abandoned your previous principle of striving for neutral and objective coverage, instead chose to immediately adopt the Ukrainian propaganda narrative on the Mariupol theater story? Have I? I don't think I have. You're going to have to expand on that. I think I'm kind of done the opposite of that. I don't know what to make about the Mariupol story. I'll need to see more stuff before I can take a hard stance one way or another on it. Is the flooding and expansion of the rivers around Chernobyl at its zenith or still expanding? I'm not aware that there was an issue with the rivers around Chernobyl. I haven't seen that personally, so I apologize, but I'm not able to comment on that. But I don't think the Dnieper up there is dammed, because that's the Dnieper, isn't it? That's the Chernobyl branch of the Dnieper that goes up there. So if they're flooding, I mean, unless it's natural flooding from the spring melting of the snow and all the snow coming into the river, that it might be localized flooding, but I don't think it's dammed anywhere along there. And if it is dammed, it would have to be upstream. So that would mean it would have to be in Belarus. So that's the only quick take I can give there. I wasn't aware that was happening to begin with. So I apologize for that. So here's some questions for Roman. So if he's still kicking about, I will bring these in for people to ask. Here's another question. I think some of these might have been covered, but nonetheless, we'll ask him. Dude, hit me up if you want a more interesting. I'll get you links. Yeah, I'll drop you a message. There's an American in Minsk as well, who I want to get on stream, but I'm looking to get him on stream with Felix particularly. So I am open to more voices as well, but I am very appreciative of Roman and everyone who's willing to speak to us about what's happening where they are in the surrounding countries. So is there any news about Odessa? I've just addressed that. Here's a link to something. What am I looking at? Where was this posted? Is that shelling is not supposed to be? Is that really correct? I'd like to see some data showing this. From what I've gathered, is that the Ruskies have tried to pinpoint hot shots of resistance while probing observation, then shell those. Sometimes they hit civvies, but probably not much. Trying to get people to leave by shooting around sounds ineffective, especially if Ukrainian soldiers. What is this in response to? What was the shelling is not supposed to be? Oh, okay, I think I get what you're saying. No, at least from the footage I have seen, is that there is deliberate shelling of residential areas by artillery, by conventional artillery, and by rocket barrages. Especially, there's footage come out of Kharkov of MLRS barrages of residential areas of the city. And again, I believe this is part of the Russian strategy that slowly keep the pressure on the city, on the civilian and the local garrison through artillery. As time goes on, people will just start to become more fearful that they could be the next one killed. The lack of sleep that's going to, the other thing to think about is constant air raid sirens. A lot of this shelling and artillery, especially in Kharkov, comes at night. That disrupts people's ability to sleep. That plays psychologically on them. It's just trying to turn on the pressure to encourage people to leave the cities. Because if the Russians are to go in at some point and physically take the cities, they don't want to be. It sounds counterintuitive, but shelling the cities in the long run, and I know it's a very dark way of looking at it, but shelling the cities, keeping up a steady, like I say, you have to take it. The Russians could completely level the city if they really wanted to within a couple of days. They're not doing that. It's a very steady rate of artillery and shelling and rocket and air strikes. If you keep that up, that's going to play psychologically with people because they can't sleep, because they're fearful to go out. They're going to make cost some benefit associations in their mind, where eventually they're just going to say, look, let's just leave the city. It's just not worth staying in the city anymore. And like I say, the basis I take from this is this is what they learned in Syria. Of course, the Russians don't particularly want to stay in Ukraine as long as Syria, but either way, Syria is kind of the most modern example of where cities have been under siege in modern warfare. So it's kind of logical that the Russians would take their leaf from there. And then going back to it, shelling the city, and again, it's counterintuitive, but if you allow me to expand my point, shelling the city in the long run might actually reduce the civilian body count, because if you can encourage the civilians to leave, if the Russians ever physically feel that they have to go into the city and fight street by street and house by house, if there aren't civilians caught in the middle of that, a lot less of them will be killed, because it's one thing firing artillery into a city whenever you've got soldiers in the middle of fighting in the city, where they're, you know, they've got itchy trigger fingers. Every movement could be an enemy soldier, so they're going to shoot at it just to be safe, because at the end of the day, a soldier is going to defend his life first and foremost most of the time. If he sees something suspicious, he's more likely to shoot at it rather than wait for it to shoot at him. So if you have civilians caught in the middle of this on both sides, between the Ukrainian and the Russian army, it will be very bloody on the civilian population if they're caught in the middle of a city fight. So that's the other way to look at it. So addressed Odessa, Ukraine democracy ever did. I mean, there has been a democracy of sorts in Ukraine. It's been a very flawed democracy, but there has been a democracy, a functioning of sorts democracy in Ukraine since the collapse of the USSR. It's actually more democratic in this way. Yeah, I would kind of agree with that. It is very flawed. All the democracies in the former US, well, in Belarus, well, I don't think you could call Belarus a democracy, but in Russia and in no, what's this? In Russia and in Ukraine, cities of Belarus, people hear a roar similar to explosions. According to local residents, explosions heard in Barovnichi, Lunitsa, Slutsk, and okay, that's not what Roman is, but I guess we'll ask him about that. But I will forward this into the Telegram channel. This has just come in. I don't know if there's anything to it, but apparently there's been explosions in a number of cities of southern Belarus. So we will deal with more of that whenever it comes out, but let's try and work for these comments. I'd say Ukrainian is, I think Ukrainian is closer to Polish and Belarusian than Russian. That's talking about the language, I'm assuming there. Where am I? Someone posting some weird gay GIF thing. By the way, Belarusian is almost identical to Ukrainian. Strange thing you would not expect. And then a bit of a discussion about how close the languages are. Is Eastern Europe ducked? Well, the massive war in Eastern Europe aside, it's probably doing better than Western Europe in the long term. Belarus is a hermit nation. I'm assuming you went to a toy store to get my gift for my friend's kid. It's like Toys R Us in the 60s. Well, I mean, I know of the history of Belarus, but if I'm going to be honest, my personal takes of what Belarus is like, and well, I've never been. I was hoping to go with someone else in 2021, 2020, sometime whenever, I think it was over Christmas 2020, whenever we were all stuck in lockdown and we heard that Belarus wasn't having lockdowns. We were meant to go, but we couldn't find flights. But again, my knowledge of what Belarus is like on a day-to-day level would be what Roman has just told us, but mostly through Bald and Bankrupt's videos there. And through Bald and Bankrupt's videos of Belarus, it actually looks like, I know obviously he's only going to show certain parts of the country, but Belarus looked like a very cozy, ordered country. In many ways, it actually looked better than Russia and Ukraine. The streets appeared to be very clean. The people seemed to be more wholesome and friendly and stuff, just going by his videos, of course, but I'm biased because I quite like Bald. Why don't all Slavic people I'm assuming you mean live in harmony? Why? Well, how many Belarusians believe that will be another question I will ask Roman if he's still about. If not, if Roman has had to toddle off, because I'm conscious it's probably getting quite late there, I'll bring him on at some point and ask him these questions that you guys are putting in. Belarus accepted Putin military assistance to quell protest, having visited Minsk and seen the love of capitalism and American company influence. Is there a break between the people's desire and the conglomeration? I'm assuming that's a question for him. So again, I'm going to try and fire through these questions so we can ask Roman these, get his takes on them. Belarus had in their eastern regions Historical links. Any comment on Putin putting top intelligence leaders under house arrest? Rumor, yeah, I've seen that. I past commented on the other day. Yeah, I would expect that there will be a degree of purge might be too strong of a word, but you can be sure that some of the failing Russian military commanders are going to be forced into retirement, potentially criminally prosecuted for incompetence and stuff like that. The intelligence as well seem to have been well off, so this could be Putin trying to clear out the intelligence chiefs that failed one way or another in their assessment of what to expect in Ukraine. So yeah, I would expect that. Yeah, there probably is a bit of a clearing of house in Russia at the moment in regards to some of the more apparent military failings and intelligence failures. So, question: people speaking between each other. It's hard to disagree with the sheer amount of assassinations carried out by the Kremlin. More people talking. Please ask Belarus. Okay, I'll put that in the chat. Oh, I need to get Microsoft Word. I'll pirate it off. Yeah, I'll ask a Russian to give me a torrent of Microsoft Word or something. I hate Notepad for this. So next time, do a video live stream on this Telegram. You can use OBS for it. Yeah, that's a good point. I should have recorded this via OBS, shouldn't I have? Yeah, the audio might be an issue on the recording that goes up on YouTube. People, I mean, there's no such much like Michael. Okay, people speculating about my sexuality for some reason. Oklahoma City was wired with explosives, similar damage. More people speaking between each other. More speaking between. I would just ask guys in future, just whenever it comes to the specific question, Fred, if you could just try and keep it down to questions as much as possible and keep the discussion between yourselves. It would just help me flow through this a bit better. The countries in Eastern Europe are corrupt because after the USSR collapsed, everybody who could steal and enrich their whole family tree got political power. And from there, you got today's climate to a degree. That is correct. More people speaking between each other. Here's talk of counteroffensive. Ukraine mounts counteroffensive, drive Russians back from Kiev, key cities. I mean, I haven't seen too much of it, but I've kind of been focused on the strike on. Continue does have it's behind a paywall, but I mean, hitting Kherson airport with artillery isn't really much of a counteroffensive. It's just firing artillery. Saying that, there was movement last night where Ukrainian tanks and military forces were moving through Nikolaev, and the city turned off its power. And I expect that was to try and mask the movements. So that could be building up to some kind of counterattack. But the Russians aren't advancing or nearly advancing as fast as they were for whatever reason, logistics, whatever. For whatever reason, the Russians just aren't advancing in any great length. So that is giving the Ukrainians breathing space. That is allowing the Ukrainians to build up their own forces to establish their defenses. And you know, I think it's coming up to a week where the Russians really haven't mounted a major military advance anywhere. So, you know, it's not just going to be the case where the Ukrainians are just going to sit and fiddle with their thumbs until the Russians decide to move again. Yeah, sooner or later, if it's already happened or what, the Ukrainians will attempt to mount counterattacks here and there where they can. I already asked you this, but since Russia can't really afford a proxy war versus the West, what would be the next logical step if they were to want to clear eastern Ukraine from Ukrainian armed forces within the next 2 weeks? I would say just sort out their logistics and supply lines, encircle Kharkiv, encircle the cities which they're kind of trying to encircle, and try and get the advances moving again, consolidate their positions, secure the countryside. Yeah, that's basically what I would say would be the logical thing for the Russians. Is they need to try and get back moving again. And then drone footage of what is this? Looks like a Russian tank. That's a loss. So I'm assuming this is footage of a Ukrainian ambush on a Russian Ural troop transport. Yeah, I'd say that I'll share this into the Telegram so people can just see what I've just been talking about. It's just been put in this chat, but this is what I'm talking about in regards to. I don't know the specifics behind this engagement or whatever, but why is this truck moving on its own? And why isn't there infantry? Well, saying that, in this drone footage, those look like civilians, not soldiers, to be fair. But either way, a single Ural truck transporting troops on its own. Why isn't this village being cleared? Why haven't Russians come through and cleared out? Is this a Ukrainian soldier? Is this he's obviously trained enough because he's got military gloves, obviously knows how to use a law. So there's some kind of Ukrainian military unit in this village. Why haven't they cleared it of that? So just another example on it's not that the Russians have problems with their tactics. We don't know that. It's just that the Russians don't seem to be using their tactics, namely their infantry screens, to protect their vehicles. Are people transporting weapons across the borders? Are people transporting weapons across the borders over targets of Russia? Yeah, I think it would be too on the nose if the Russians were to start hitting NATO weaponry, like at the, right at the border, right in the border checkpoints. They'll probably, if the Russians are smart, if their drones are capable of it, is it have drones constantly circling the Polish border, the Romanian border, watching what comes across, trucks that look like they could be ammo trucks, follow those. As soon as they get maybe 10, 20 miles deep into Ukraine, then hit them there. Question, is sending Switchblade suicide drones, White House, I'm assuming WH is White House, is sending Switchblade suicide drones to Ukraine, comments on effects escalation. I guess it depends how many they send of them and how effective the Russians are at shooting them down. I know that suicide drones was the big thing the Armenians used against, the Azeris used to great effect against the Armenians. But again, it depends how many, because unlike the Armenian army, I don't see how a drone swarm could really overcome the Russian army with the amount of vehicles it can put into the field, and especially if it's able to field its air defense effectively. I do know that the Russians have tried to deploy some of their suicide drones, but a problem with those is that they don't seem to be exploding on impact, because the Ukrainians have been taking pictures of, I believe there was like a Ukrainian armored vehicle where one of these Russian suicide drones basically flew into somewhere north of Kiev. The crew heard a big loud thump. Whenever they got out to look at it, they found the remains of this drone that failed to explode. So the Russians are using them. The Russian ones don't seem to be too effective, but I couldn't really comment too much on that. Foreign marks like this Canadian sniper who died, we don't know if he died. The story that the Russians put out about that is a bit, how he could get into Ukraine and then get into Mariupol days after Mariupol had been completely encircled sounds a bit far-fetched to me, so we don't know if he's actually dead yet. Is it the case that infantry special operator forces guys, forgetting sometimes that they're fighting a conventional war, they'll just use overwhelming power to the mindset conventional force, bombs, artillery as a response to entrenched snipers? Same thing the West does, continue suppression fire. Is it that lots of these guys seem to think that Call of Duty prepares you for a level of carnage, complexity, conventional warfare? Apparently that attitude had rubbed off until the infantry focused. If I'm reading this right, I've spoken a bit at this. I genuinely don't think there's probably too many Redditors and Call of Duty people who have actually turned up in Ukraine. I think the Ukrainians would probably just send them back on their way. I genuinely think that probably the majority of people who have turned up in Ukraine will have military experience somewhere or another, be they Western militaries, be it these idiotic Brazilians who seem to Instagram their entire life stories. They seem to have been in the Brazilian army and the police, or in some cases the French Foreign Legions at some point. Although I don't think the French Foreign Legion ever would have beaten it out of these people not to Instagram everything they do and everywhere they go. But either way, the majority of Westerners who have gone to Ukraine probably have military experience of some degree. But and I've made this distinction a couple of times, is that the war that these people, that these veterans, these Western fight veterans will have fought, the war in Afghanistan, the war in Iraq, they held the advantage in every sphere. They had artillery on demand, they had air strikes on demand, they were the ones with the armored vehicles, they were the ones with perfect communications whenever they needed. If one of them got injured, a Black Hawk or a Chinook medevac could be on site within 20 minutes and then take them off to a fully prepared hospital back at Camp Bastion or Kandahar or wherever. They were the ones who were fighting from the position of complete dominance. And I know for very different reasons, so I know this is kind of a facetious argument, but despite that advantage, they still lost the war in Afghanistan. The war that they're going in, that's the war that these people have experienced from in Iraq and Afghanistan. And I'm not, those wars were brutal. They have, there's just another update. A video of explosions in Belarusian city of Stalino. Update: Belarusian military training and exercises are taking place in the region. Jesus Christ, what a time to have military exercises. Okay, so just on that previous point about explosions in Belarus, it looks like the Belarusian army, Lukashenko, has decided to hold very convenient military exercises in the area. And I've lost the comment thread again. Here we go. So back to, I'm not just, I have family who fought in Afghanistan and Iraq, and I know how brutal it was. I'm not discounting what those men went to and the professionalism and their experience, but that's the war that they fought. And the war they fought is very different to the war that's happening in Ukraine. The war that these veterans going into Ukraine to fight they're the ones at the disadvantage. They're the ones who are going to be hit with the artillery. They're now the ones who are going to be hit by airstrikes. If they get wounded, that Black Hawk isn't going to come in and land and take them straight back to a hospital. They're the ones who are at the disadvantage. They're the ones who are going to be going up against the tanks. It's a completely different war that they're fighting. And are they those are the people who are the most adept to adjust to that than Redditors or people with no combat experience. But either way, that's the war that they're going to have to fight, and it's different from the ones that they're experienced fighting. So are they able to adjust to that? That would be the comment that I would make about Western veterans in Ukraine. I would hope that many of them have understand that and have gone there with that knowledge that they are fighting from the position of weakness here. So questions between each other. Yes, it's natural flooding in Belarus, happens every spring. It's significant to war regarding ability to mobilize heavy equipment. Thought Roman might have insight. Yeah, I'll ask him. It is. I've tried to make this point quite strongly over the past week. Again, forgive my pronunciation, but the Raputia, it's mud season. It is mud season in Ukraine, in Western Russia, in Belarus. The snows have melted. The ground is sodden. It is muddy. Vehicles, tanks, tracked vehicles get completely bogged down in this kind of stuff. So any movement across country it's going to be very slow. It's going to be very powerless. So most advances in combat will have to be relegated for up until maybe, I believe it's around about mid to late April is whenever the summer suns start to come in and dry out the mud. So up until then, for the next month and a half, 2 months, essentially, if there's going to be an advances, it's going to have to be on tarmac, or else we're going to see a lot of vehicles having to be abandoned because they get stuck in the mud. So yeah, that is, I will ask Roman about that. But Roman, like me, is I believe he is a lifelong city dweller, an urbanite. So I don't know if Mud season in Belarus, Ukraine. So, I live in London, so I can't see too much of the countryside. But yeah, it is mud season in Ukraine. Snow's melted, and if they're not already there and haven't already started arriving, the spring rains are rapidly approaching. So let's have a look. Because historically, before they were all drained, it's pretty much most of Ukraine and most of Belarus was just a giant swamp. Well, a large part of northern Ukraine was just a giant swamp historically. A lot of it's been drained since then, but especially around the Chernobyl area, that southern part of Belarus, northern Ukraine, that is still it's very much swampland, and that used to stretch through vast swathes of Eastern Europe. So let's see. People talking amongst each other. Why are you not allowed on Felix streams with CRP on? Can you outline his beef with you? I did hear him whining about Felix being friends with people didn't like. I don't know. I haven't watched that stream. Has he actually mentioned me? I mean, no. Felix hasn't asked me on to the stream with him, so it's not my place to invite myself on. Like I say, if Gonzalo is aware of me, I mean, I have physically met him, but if he is aware of my commentary, I mean, to be honest, it's not. I'm not criticizing him on a personal level. It's just I think what he's doing is foolish. It's just I don't see the risks on it, and I'd have critiques of some of the things that I have personally seen him say. But no, Felix hasn't invited me onto the stream, so I don't know if I don't want to speculate and cause any bad blood anywhere. But no, I just haven't been asked onto the streams. And on that point, also, there's been a large earthquake in Japan tonight. It is quite late in the evening, early morning in Japan. So tomorrow, I would expect that Felix has probably got more important things to do than these streams. But as soon as I hear from him, I'll let you guys know if he's okay. I expect he would be, because Tokyo's a couple hundred miles south of the earthquake. It was in the Sendai Fukushima area. So yeah, but I did hear him whining about Felix being friends with people he didn't like. I mean, unless I watched the stream and see what he said, I couldn't comment about it, to be honest. But Michael, it's all good now. I've been watching the stream, and your take on the theater is more balanced and reasonable than your posts about it here on originally suggested. I was just a bit irritated by your initial lack of critical thinking. Keep up the good work. I appreciate it. Like I say, I'm assuming this. Oh yes, this is about the theater. The theater situation was just developing, so I was just outlining stuff as it came out on Telegram. As I do, I have a tendency to ramble on stream, so I can put a bit more. I can outline stuff a bit more on stream than I would, I guess, in the Telegram post, because a lot of stuff gets missed in translation whenever it's just put across via text on Telegram. Is this turning into an inch by inch war? In the cities, potentially, but in general, no. It would be, because you have to understand about the terrain of Ukraine. If it's going to turn into sort of a war of attrition, it's going to be between village, as opposed from inch by inch, apart from the cities where it could turn into that. But Ukraine is largely flat. And in the north, there are forests, but in the south, it's just open plains until you come to some towns and cities. So if it's going to turn into that kind of warfare, that would favor the Russians until they can get into those towns specifically. And if it's going to turn into that kind of war of attrition, it'd just be kind of, okay, the Russians have taken this village, and, it'd be by village if it turns into that kind of thing. And I don't want to be here for hours, but there's a number of ways that could work out. I mean, I'll not comment on that. There's a well-demonstrated, I remember watching that, Radioactive Wolves of Chernobyl. Yeah, I watched that years ago. I should look that up and have a look at that again. because you're fielding questions in two places on your own, the people writing in Telegram, okay, yeah, that's a fair point. I wouldn't know how to rectify that. Because you're fielding questions, writing, people talk amongst themselves, declaring questions, there are people here who could advise you on how to set stuff. It's worth pursuing. Yeah, like I say, this is only my third fully independent stream. I hope to improve this as it goes on. So this is all work in progress with that caveat. If this goes on prolonged, guys, I am going to hopefully improve on stuff as I work along with it. So if you can just forgive me some of the boomerisms that I might make along the way. So I am worried about planting season that is coming up. I wonder how much of the world will be affected by the loss of production in Ukraine and Russia. If anything, I would expect probably you'll see an increase in production in Russia. I think the Russian government is probably going to really put an effort to make sure that it's domestic farming. I wouldn't expect there to be a decline at all in Russia. Well, the loss of capital. I wouldn't expect Russia to be, the output of farm produce to decline in Russia significantly, if at all. If anything, I would expect it to increase in some ways. Ukraine, yes, that is a big concern because especially in the south, a lot of this area a lot of the fighting is being done across farmland. It will be interesting to see in the areas of Kherson that the Russians control, how if there is going to be a Russian policy towards the farmers, because the best way to keep people from joining a resistance or an insurgency or anything like that is you put them to work in meaningful jobs that are going to provide for them and their families. If people are left idle because their jobs are closed down, they get frustrated, they get agitated, that builds up resentment. So if the Russians are able to swing it to a location where they go into the farmers and to any Ukrainians who have businesses or any source of employment, and they say, okay, we are where we are, there is the war, but we want you to work, we want you to earn your money, feed your family. Farmers, go out to your fields. If there's munitions in your fields, tell us, we'll come and clear your fields for you so you can work, so you can produce, so you can earn a living for your family. That would be logically what I would expect the Russians to do for the farmers. Also, that's depending on how the Russians go about it, that could be potentially, I wouldn't expect the Russians to tax it, but it creates an economy of sorts in that area of Ukraine under Russian control. So it's not completely dependent on Russian aid, on Russian supply to feed the local population. And as I say, busy people who have lives to lead, have jobs to work, families to feed, if they're less likely to go off and start causing trouble for the Russians in the area. But yeah, I don't know the specific figures of what Ukrainian yearly annual farm output juice is, but I mean, I've been saying it for weeks now, is if you can, it might be too late for it, but maybe 2 weeks ago it might have been a good time to get in on the international commodity market and start investing in wheat, in buying bushels of wheat, buying cereal goods, sunflower. There was a story I posted the other day where sunflower oil stocks are going to be quite badly impacted across the European Union because apparently Ukraine produces a massive amount of the global sunflower production. So yeah. Who is this guy? I keep saying I feel kind of negligent that I don't know who this person is. Best follow if you speak Russian. Oh, is that all the questions? That went pretty quick. I thought there'd be more. But what are your thoughts on Dugin? Do you think he had any impact on Putin's thinking on the start of the conflict? Just found his Telegram channel. He is very active on Telegram. I know in the West, Dugin is seen as either a pariah or one of the greatest thinkers there and based. I don't know. I think the West has this kind of warped view of Dugin. I think they ascribe far more influence and power to him than he actually holds. I know some people who have actually met Dugin and interviewed him, and their impression was he was kind of like sort of a fuddy-duddy kind of university professor whose opinion was once taken up, but was listened to by certain figures in the Kremlin. But it's not like he's not like a Steve Bannon figure in the Trump White House. He's not the one doing the strategy and stuff. He puts out certain ideas, but I don't think Russia or the Russian government has a Eurasianist perspective. Because Dugin's work in Eurasianism, it's kind of like this esoteric mysticism that the Eastern nations have, as opposed to the more logical and materialist ideals of the Western Atlantic nations. I don't see that in the Russian government. I think the Russian government is more just pragmatic in terms of its security needs and its influence in its quote unquote near abroad, as opposed to a genuine Eurasianist perspective. Although saying that this pivot towards Asia is, well, it's kind of forced by Western sanctions for Russia to look towards China and India for its future economic dealings. But yeah, like I said, I think Dugin is kind of like this. He's been made out by Western figures, especially, to kind of something more than what he actually is. That would be my take on that. But I can imagine that question for you. Dugin is not as influential as, yeah, that was a comment there. So I think that is all the questions in Telegram. Let me have a quick look at YouTube in case anyone has decided. I think there's a few. Putin should have started during the Olympics. Hey, Michael, welcome back. I'm glad to be back. Holiday to Chernobyl. Is that, if I'm going to be honest, I would actually have loved to have gone to Chernobyl. I'm a big fan of the Stalker series. So I would have spurred out if I was able to go to Chernobyl, to be honest. A bird I know said her holiday is cancelled this year because the radiation is getting bad from the fighting. I don't know if I know where these people have come from. They've come from the chat. No, yeah, like there wasn't much fighting in Chernobyl, and there'd be a relative increase in localized radiation through the dust thrown up through the vehicles and troops moving through the area. But it's not going to be at the level where I would imagine it's going to spread any significant way beyond the zone or radically increase permanent radioactivity within the area, unless someone has done something very stupid somewhere. I wouldn't expect that. But yeah, I don't think anyone would be taking a holiday to Belarus, Russia, or Ukraine in the near future, be it Chernobyl or otherwise. So that is it for Facebook. Has anyone else posted anything else in the Telegram chat? And if not, then I will. Any new thoughts on the Middle East, political alliances? Not at the moment. I haven't been able really to have a look. I've mostly just still been focused on Ukraine. But on that point, Roman is still here. So hello, Roman, you're unmuted. Are you still there? Have I unmuted him?
Oh, do you hear me now?
Yeah, I hear you now. Sorry to drag you on so long. So if you don't...
So, as I see, there are many questions people want to ask me, so...
Yeah, not a problem. So we'll just run through these and then we'll call it a night. So I'm conscious it must be getting quite late in Minsk at the moment, so I don't want to keep you around for much longer.
Okay, but I'm on vacations now, so... Yeah, I can go sleep whatever I want.
Fair enough. So I've got them up on screen. So one of the first question is, are you worried that Western military aid might leak onto the black market in Belarus by any chance? I'm assuming that's what that's asking.
Yes, there are some chances that some Western weaponry may appear in the black market, but Belarusian police and KGB is monitoring the situation, and I can say they monitoring the whole situation about illegal weaponry since 2014, since the Ukrainian war has started. And Belarusian authorities are keeping an eye on that topic, and they are monitoring the situation and keep our country free from illegal weaponry.
Okay, just on that point, is there much gun crime in Belarus?
No, not that much. Gun crimes are very rare, and there is a little chance you can be victim of that or something.
Okay, so the next question is: in the early days of the war in the Donbass, all people were bringing out old Soviet weaponry from their barns and that their grandfathers had lost, quote unquote, in World War II. Do you know if that happens at all in Belarus? If people might be keeping certain weapons from the patriotic war is for rainy day?
Actually, they may, because since the Second World War, there are some leftovers from the battlefield. Like, for example, some weapon may be lost by the Germans or by Soviets, and since that was laying in the ground, and some people are digging that weapons out and they store them. And but police forces are constantly monitoring that situation, and if someone who can store that World War II weaponry, they may be arrested and even imprisoned.
Okay. And then I've got another question here. I should probably have gotten a bit more of the context of it, but it says, ask him if he wants to pay European Union prices or if he likes the current ones subsidized by Russia. I think that's kind of getting at, would you prefer to be closer to the European Union or closer to Russia? I think that's kind of the gist of that.
Okay, as I have already said, I want Belarus to be a neutral country, and I don't want Belarus to participate in any political or military alliance. So regarding questions about natural gas prices, honestly speaking, I would prefer to pay market prices rather than subsidized prices. Because Lukashenko, when he came to power, this is like he cemented his power, because he gains popularity by claiming that I am the one who gave you these cheap prices for gas, for natural gas, and that's why everything is cheap. But in the same time, he made Belarusian economy uncompetitive. It is like maybe some drug addict compare, because he on Belarusian economy only able to live with the cheap subsidized prices, and that means Belarus is very dependable on Russia, and Putin can force Belarus to do what he wants, and can manipulate that natural gas prices. So I would prefer to Belarus to be truly independent and to be truly and to have a truly sustainable economy. And I would prefer to pay market prices. And I think it's a much better option.
Okay, I can sympathize that, being a Brexiteer in Britain. Yeah, but national sovereignty, it's often worth paying the price for, especially if you can have a more effective, more efficient economy. So, go on. Oh, and now the next question is, how do Belarusian people feel about their own volunteers fighting Russian forces in Ukraine?
That depends on ideology people have. I suppose that people who have communist ideology hate them because they are fighting aligned with the Nazis or fascists or something like that. But people who have nationalistic views or maybe even liberal viewpoint, they support these forces.
Okay.
And support Belarusian volunteers. But also keep in mind there are Belarusian volunteers who fought on the DNR side and LNR side, on the pro-Russian separatists in Western Ukraine.
Okay.
There are also Belarusian volunteers.
Okay.
Do that.
Do you know if the ones who have fought for the Russians, do they get prosecuted by the police if they come back to Belarus?
Okay, there were a couple of cases. Maybe that's because I don't know much cases because government don't like this topic to be discussed very much. But there are several cases. Well, at least I know one exact case when volunteer who fought in the Ukrainian armed forces was arrested and persecuted and spent 5 years in prison.
Oh, okay. I think we've kind of done this question before, but what is local Minsk media saying about Belarusian involvement in the conflict? What is the national leadership saying? Like I say, I think we've kind of covered that one, but if you have anything else to add?
Okay, I repeat my answer. I don't really read some newspaper. I don't really watch TV, and I don't really know what they are saying.
Okay.
I don't like Lukashenko and don't listen to what he's speaking, and I don't know really, and I don't care.
Not a problem. And I guess the next question kind of comes under that answer as well. Belarus accepted Putin's military assistance to quell the protests. I'm assuming this is the election protests last year, the year before. Having visited Minsk and seen the love of capitalism and American company influence, is there a break between the people's desire and the conglomeration that is business and government there? Not too sure if that's makes much sense.
I don't really know how to answer that
Yeah,
question.
it's kind of not written the best way.
It's too complicated.
I mean, seeing the love is there. I think it's asking, is there a big disconnect between the government and the people of Belarus? I think that's the way I'm going to.
I don't think so. Well, I'm pretty sure that the last elections was quite fair and Lukashenko won fairly. I'm pretty sure about that, and I'm also absolutely sure that he on his previous election he won absolutely fairly. So how to explain my idea? Well, I guess maybe even some people who criticize Lukashenko have same views and have some mind on the problems, and even people who criticize Lukashenko are similar to his political viewpoint.
Okay.
Maybe too difficult to explain. Maybe I don't speak English good enough.
So so political opposition against Lukashenko, they might not like Lukashenko, but they support essentially what the Russians are doing to a degree.
No, it's very difficult to explain because Lukashenko is his political viewpoint like communism, socialism, and populism, and opposition forces are basically the same. They are criticizing him, they are pretending to be different to him, but in fact they are absolutely the same.
Okay, I get you now. So essentially, go on.
South Park episode about giant douche and tart sandwich.
Yeah. Okay. So even if they came to power, not much would change.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, not a problem. Please ask the Belarusian co-host about, so is there much pro-war sentiment that you've felt from the Belarusian people, and do you think that Belarus at some point might join Russia in military operations in Ukraine?
There is little pro-war sentiment, and there's absolutely, well, not absolutely, but very few people who want really to participate in the war. I think Belarus won't be participating in this war. and there is no sentiment about war. Not many people are interested in that. Like most of the people want to live their peaceful life and like living a regular life.
Okay, not a problem. And then the final question from, just had a quick look, doesn't seem to be any more. So the final question here would be, would you have any comments about the mud season in Belarus and Ukraine and Western Russia at all?
Well, it mainly depends on the region. In the southern part of Belarus and the northern part of Ukraine, there is a region called Polessia. In Belarus, we pronounce it. So there is many swamps and this region is very dirty in the autumn and in the spring, but most of the Belarus are not that muddy or dirty or something. But most of my life I live in the city, so I can't really tell you the picture of it.
And then I guess the other thing is, while I was doing the stream, I have seen some posts coming out saying that there appeared to be some explosions in some cities in southern Belarus.
There is a post about it, but I've never heard about it. I will check this information and I will maybe left some comment or something.
Okay, not a problem. I appreciate it. From my understanding is the Belarusian state was saying that the army is doing drills down there, but if you're able to hear anything on your end, I'd appreciate it. And then I guess to kind of round off the stream, just a personal question from me. Have you ever driven in a Buhanka before?
No, I haven't. No, I guess no. This Buhanka is very popular in Russia because this car is very cheap and quite reliable. And but in Belarus, people don't like that car because most of the people used cars from Europe because country is very poor.
Breaking my heart here. I was hoping to get a personal tale of trip in a Buhanka, but other than that, I guess thank you very much, Roman, for coming on. I very much appreciate it. I hope the people who've listened to this stream and in the Telegram have enjoyed it as well, and I hope we've been able to answer some of their questions. So.
Many thanks for your invitation. If some people have some questions, I will participate in another stream and answer their questions. So feel free to ask, and I'll help you and answer whatever I can.
Not a problem. Thank you very much. I appreciate it a lot. And this is me going to round off the stream, guys. So thank you very much for listening. I hope we've been able to clear up some issues that you might have. Again, I hate, I'm going to grift, but I have put up a coffee account, which can be found through some of the stuff. If you're minded that way, that is out there. But other than that, thank you very much for coming along. And like I say, I don't know if I'll be on a stream tomorrow with Felix because there has been the earthquake in Japan. He's probably got more important things to deal with. But if he doesn't, I might do another stream tomorrow myself. So other than that, thank you very much. And I hope you all have a good night, and I'll speak to you soon. And again, thank you very much, Roman. I hope you have a good evening as well.
Okay, thank you too.
No problem. See ya. So that is that. How do I turn off the restream on? For people who might be listening on YouTube, I do apologize if the audio has been a bit finicky there. For future streams, I will try and rectify that as much as I can. But either way, thank you for sticking through it, and I hope you're able to get something from this. So